Today's lesson is lesson 68, and it's kind of a common continuation from yesterday's. It is naming decimal numbers. And all it is just practicing the way you say and write various decimals. So, naming decimal numbers. I think the easiest thing would be is to back up to what we did yesterday and kind of get a running start into today. So if I had 2/10 as the fraction form, go ahead and write down what would my decimal form be. And you should have written 0.2. Now, our next step today is just being able to go from the fraction to the decimal and then to the written, because we would never say 0.2, we would say 2/10. So, writing it out would be 2/10. So, those are basically the three steps that you have. You have the fraction, and then you have it written as a decimal, and then you have it written in words. So go ahead and label those: fraction, decimal, and finally words. Now the only difference is today we're going to be adding in whole numbers with that. So the same thing would go if we had 2 and 2/10. Now if we make the next step to write it as a decimal, we have a whole number of 2 and 2/10. Now here again, just like we said it here, when you say that, you say 2 and 2/10. When we write it, the decimal is said as what? Hopefully you remember, because we've talked about this. It would be the decimal is your and. So we have 2 and 2/10. Here, 2 and 2/10. And then when you go to write it out in words, you are writing out exactly what you are saying, which is 2 and 2/10. So again, we have fraction written out. We have a decimal form of the same number, and we have words. Key to remember is the decimal is said as an and. Now sometimes they may give it to you in one form and then ask you to write it in the other two forms. So they may say 27.36, and they may say write it as a mixed number. Well, the mixed number is the fraction form because it's a whole number and a fraction. That's the mixed number. So then if they said write it as a fraction, which is the same as write it as a mixed number, you would write 27. And go ahead and write the fraction. Let's see if you can get it correct by looking at that decimal. Hopefully you put 36 over 100. So we have 27 and 36 100ths, which is right what we have here is the same thing as what we have here. And then finally we would write it out in words, and we would have 27 7, and, remember that and is the decimal, and 36 hundredths. Do not forget the TH on that. 36 hundredths. Now, one thing I will point out, remember hyphens. If you don't have them, they will be marked wrong. The second thing I want to point out is remember your and. When you get to your decimal, you have to put the and. So that is basically the entire lesson right there, is going from the three forms, which would be the decimal form, the fraction, and sometimes it can be also called mixed number if it's a whole number and a fraction, and then finally to words. So that is the ways that you name a decimal. We'll talk more about it in class just to give you a little bit more practice, but hopefully you'll be able to follow it along just fine. One final thing is some of you are having a hard time viewing the videos. The biggest cause of that is not refreshing when you go to the file again. So when you go to the math video file, please, if you don't see the lesson, hit refresh. And what that'll do is sometimes your computer will store where you've been, the websites you visit. And so if it stored the website before, then when you go to look at it now, it doesn't appear to be there. But when you hit refresh, it will update so that the newest ones are showing. That is the biggest issue that people have in working with any drive, but especially Google Drive, because of the nature of the website.